Hello, and welcome to the Mystic Feminine Fertility Podcast, a space for heart-centered conversations about menstrual cycles, fertility, and divine feminine energy. My name is Annalise Yagyagjoti, and I am your host, your guide here. I am a reproductive health practitioner who specializes in cycle tracking and fertility optimization. This podcast is brought to you by my free online membership, Mystic Cycles Sisterhood, which is a chock full resource online of PDFs and videos, and there's a Telegram group and so many beautiful things to help you connect to your cycle, connect to other women, and it's all for free. Without further ado, let's jump into today's interview. I am so excited to share with you all a conversation with Emily Kelly, who is the creator of East Raleigh Doula Company. East Raleigh Doula Company was birthed from Emily's own birth experiences, from one disempowering, high intervention, minimally educated birth to an incredible, empowering physiological birth. She discovered her passion for helping women be equipped, informed, and confident about their choices in pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. In 2020, East Raleigh Doula Company was created to do just that. Over the years, that vision remains the same, but has grown to include a passion for developing and equipping more doulas to carry on that vision. Now, as a team, they support hundreds of families all over the Triangle in birth, postpartum, education, fitness, and more. So this episode is chock full of information about preparing for pregnancy, about what a doula is and isn't. There's information here for those of you who live locally in North Carolina and for those of you who don't. As you know, I love talking about all things menstrual infertility. So this conversation was such a pleasure and a joy, and I'm so excited for you all to hear it. All righty. Emily, where are you at in your current menstrual cycle?
Oh, interesting question. So I actually have had quite a journey when it comes to my cycle. I have not had regular cycles pretty much my entire life, but more specifically over the last 8 years or so, I've actually had very irregular cycles and have actually been diagnosed as postmenopausal since I was 28. So it's a whole journey for me to answer that question.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
And were those symptoms showing up before you had your kids?
Yes. So, ever since I was about 17, I started having um, hot flashes and just really odd cycles, really heavy cycles, really spaced out. Sometimes I'd go like 80 days between, sometimes it'd be 20 days between, and it was just super regular. Um, it didn't really seem to affect me having my two kids. I was able to have them with no issues whatsoever. But then after my daughter, when we were wanting to have more kids, it wasn't happening. And over the course of after them was where we kind of realized the hormone levels and how off they were and kind of that journey transitioning for us. But I did definitely have very irregular cycles and hormone issues my entire life.
Fascinating. And was part of that a catalyst for you getting into the world of birth work?
Honestly, no, which is weird. It was really my own experience with birth that led me into this work, and parenting that led me into this work. And then I think it's kind of come full circle where it's opened my eyes. So my own birth experience with my son, I kind of just went into it completely ignorant to all things birth. I knew nothing at all. I kind of was just like, let me go have a baby. This is what people do. And so I followed my doctor's orders. I followed what my mom said. I ended up getting an induction and having a really high intervention birth. And I wouldn't walk away saying it was super traumatic necessarily, but I walked away feeling really disempowered and feeling like this this wasn't supposed to happen this way. I felt like again, it just happened to me. And so fast forward a few months, I was, exploring more into holistic parenting options and trying to figure out like how to, be the best mom ever according to Instagram. And so I would just start researching more about like holistic options and things like that. And it started getting me to think more about how my birth was. And then, surprise, surprise, 7 months after having my son, I got pregnant with my daughter. Again, shockingly, not really sure how that happened, but it did. And decided to do things differently with her. And so with my daughter's birth, I, researched a lot more. I took classes. I was like, I want to just do this much more holistically. And so I was like, I want to go physiological, unmedicated birth. I want to go to a birth center with a midwife. And so that's what I did. I switched my care. I got a doula. I took the classes. I got much more informed and educated and ended up having a super confident, empowering birth experience. And so I walked away from that birth feeling like this is the best feeling ever. I was so confident. I was so empowered. This is amazing. And so after that is kind of what made me say, I want to help other women feel this empowered and confident after their birth. How do I do that? And so for 2 years, I just started going to friends' births and just kind of dipping into that world, and I fell in love with it. And then over the course of the time beyond that is when I started actually becoming a professional doula, starting my agency, things like that. But it was actually my own birth experiences. But then looking back and seeing how much my fertility has been affected, it definitely has like shifted some of my perspective of why I do what I do. And it's kind of added on to looking at my whole health history. Now it's an addition to why I do what I do.
That is so powerful. And yeah, like this night and day transition between like just going with the flow and then these other types of more holistic, we'll say empowered births. And having
Hmm.
a doula can be such an important part of that.
Absolutely.
Had you even heard of a doula before your first birth?
Absolutely not. I had no idea. Even when it came to me preparing for my second birth, literally how I found a doula was I went on Google and I said how to have an unmedicated birth.
Uh-huh.
And like one of the things that popped up was like get a doula. I said, "What the heck is this doula?" And it just happened to be the way I met my doula. I wasn't even considering getting one. I was just kind of a thought, but I happened to be at this mom's group one night and one of the women there was training to be a doula. And she was like, "Hey, can I go to your birth?" And I said, "Why not? Sure." And so it kind of was a happenstance. But I learned, oh my gosh, based on my own birth, how valuable having a doula at your birth could be.
Hmm. Yeah, I've never given birth, but when I've talked to my mom, so she didn't use a doula with me. I was the firstborn, but with my younger brother, she did, and she described it similarly of just night and day difference.
Hmm.
And so I've always known what a doula was. And I work
Yeah.
in the fertility awareness field. I do a lot of preconception coaching. And so oftentimes, when people do get pregnant, once we've reached that point in the journey, I'm like, okay, time to send you off to a doula. And at first, when I started doing that, people would say, "What's a doula?" And I was like, "Oh, right, this isn't something that everyone knows."
Hmm.
What is a doula?
Ooh, great question. It's funny talking about like people don't know it's a doula. I love looking at statistics, and we'll probably talk about this more, but one of the things that evidence-based shows that only 6% of people use a doula in their birth. So 94% don't. And it just goes to show like people don't know what a
I
doula
don't
is. So
know.
to answer your question, a doula is a helper. We are a support person to be a part of your birth experience, to help provide physical support, emotional support, advocacy, and education throughout your pregnancy, your birth, and postpartum experience. And so, what that looks like when it comes to physical support, especially with our group, what we're really focused on is understanding like how the biomechanics of the pelvis and how the body works with your baby. And so physically, we want to make sure that you are moving your body in a way that's optimizing fetal presentation, that's optimizing progression of labor, that's optimizing comfort. And so physically, we're going to help you with changing positions and movement and things that are going to help make sure baby's in the best position possible to help you have the essentially easiest labor possible. That's really what we're going for. And so that looks like that physical movement. It looks like massage, hands-on techniques, coaching to kind of help you feel physically supported. Emotionally, I mean, people talk about it all the time. Birth is 80% mental, right? And so we're there to ensure that you are staying in the mental headspace that you need to be. The best way to birth is relaxed. Being relaxed and at peace and calm throughout your birth is going to help in every aspect. And I could get onto a whole thing about that. But, and so our goal is to make sure that you're staying relaxed, you're staying confident, you're staying supported, and you feel like you are working through this birth process. And so that might be giving you birth affirmations, that might be praying for you, that might be holding you and telling you you're doing an amazing job and you're a great mom. And so emotionally, we're really being a support person for you there. Education and advocacy is like honestly the most of what we do. It's huge, huge, and super important for us to make sure that you are super educated in the birth process and understanding all of your options surrounding birth. And so it's not our birth, it's not us dictating anything for you. It's us giving you all of your options. And then when you, as a mother, make a decision, we are here to support that and we're here to help you achieve that goal. And so we do childbirth education classes, we do, newborn classes, we do, prenatal fitness and labor prep classes and all these classes and education. But then we actually get in the nitty-gritty, make a birth plan with you, do birth prep with you, do like really intentional planning and preparing so that you can have the birth that you want. And then in the birth room, advocating for that. And a lot of people, I think a lot of doulas have a misunderstanding of what advocacy is. I think sometimes in birth trainings, we get scared to advocate. We get told, like, don't speak up for your client. But the way that I imagine advocacy is that we are not your voice, but we are your microphone. We are amplifying our clients' voices to make sure that they're being heard. And so, as a doula, when we're in the birth room and we see a provider coming in and trying to coerce or trying to, fearmonger or coming in and not asking for consent or just trying to do something, we can speak up and say, hey, provider, I just want to make sure that you saw her birth plan states that she doesn't want this. Can we make sure we change our language? Or can we make sure we're not offering this? And we can make sure we're speaking up and protecting our client and to have the best birth experience that they can possibly have. So that's kind of all encompassing what a doula is and what we do.
I mean, how can anyone hear that description and not want a doula?
Right.
I feel like one of the things that people get confused about is the difference between a doula and a midwife.
hmm Yeah. So if you really want to make it super simplistic, a
Mhm.
midwife is medical, a doula is not. And
Right.
so our support is solely based on supporting and what we like to call is like holding the mother. And so we are here to ensure that mom is getting all of the support that she can, that she is feeling cared for, seen, heard. She's having the birth that she's wanting. She's getting educated. She's being advocated for. And our focus is holding her up. A midwife is really focused on some of that, but more so on the medical aspect of it, which a lot of people think like midwives are not medical, and that's not true. They actually are, not in a negative way, but in a safety way. Like they're looking out for baby, they're looking out for heart tones, they're looking out for, blood loss, they're looking out for blood pressure and things like that. That's outside of our scope. Our focus is like the mental and physical process of labor support, where a midwife is looking at the more like big picture of the health of the labor process.
Mhm. And do you feel like those two roles can complement each other? Like it's helpful to have both?
Absolutely. Especially depending on the birth setting. So a lot of times, majority of people birth in hospitals.
Mhm.
And so if they're birthing in a hospital, typically it's not one-on-one support. Typically one midwife to six patients sometimes. And so they're jumping from room to room to room. So I've been at many a births where they've had a midwife working with them and that midwife got stuck in another delivery. And so a hospitalist has to come in. And so having someone that's continuous support the whole time, that's not going to leave your side is super important. But even let's say at a birth center or a home birth, some people are like, well, why would I need a doula there? Again, the focus and the attention is different. And so a midwife in a birth center or a home birth, sure, they can offer suggestions and movement and things like that. But ultimately, their focus is the health and safety of you and baby, where our focus is much more comprehensive on the physiological process of labor and providing actual, consistent, continuous support earlier on in labor up until after a baby's born.
Amazing.
Yeah.
How much, I feel like some people get concerned about the price of hiring a doula. What
hmm
would you say is like the average financial investment for this person who is helping you prepare for birth and then being there with you during that process?
Yeah, so I think it really varies where you live, where, like, what kind of support you're looking for. Are you wanting more education? Are you wanting backup? There's a lot of factors that go into it. I would say on average, you're looking at like anywhere between $1,000 and $1,800 for a doula. Um, Give or take. Again, that's really just for the birth aspect. If you're wanting postpartum, that's going to be a different expense. That's going to be probably more in that like $35 to $45 an hour range. But as far as like a labor package, you're getting a lot of support over the course of the months of your pregnancy, labor, and immediate postpartum. And so like yeah, anywhere in that range of like 1,000 to 1,800 is probably going to be reasonable.
Right. Which, like, if it's going to change your birth experience, like, night and day,
Hmm.
absolutely. I mean, everyone that I've talked to that has used a doula was like, it was 1,000% worth it.
Uh-huh. Yep. And a lot of dads, like it's usually the dads who are like, no, we're not spending $1,000 on this person. I'm gonna be with you. But I always not to like rub it in their face or to be like, I'm better than you, but to just kind of give them a perspective is like, do you know what it means if a baby's asynclitic? Like, do you know what it means if baby is occiput posterior? Like, do you understand like why, like what we actually do? It's not just holding hands and rubbing backs. Like that's part of what we do. But so there's so much more. Like, do you know what to do if a provider comes in and says they want to place an IUPC? You don't. So let's talk about what that means and how a doula can step in and help in those scenarios. We're not here to take over. We're not here to make it about us. We're here to provide an additional layer of support for everybody in the room. But yeah, like the cost sometimes can be a sticker shock for some people, but like most people will spend 30 to $50,000 on a wedding for one day, but it's like 1,000 or $1,500 for a birth doula for what also will be one of the most memorable moments of their entire life. It's so important, especially with the level of trauma that does happen in the birth world. Like, if you can do anything to help minimize your risk of trauma, it's worth every penny.
Absolutely. It is such an important time to feel supported and empowered, because it's so deeply transformative and
Mhm.
primal and all of the things.
Absolutely.
You mentioned briefly the postpartum care. Now, while I knew what a doula was for most of my life since my mom used one, I didn't find out what a postpartum doula was until relatively recently, like the last 5 years. And I thought it was just the coolest thing. And I want everyone to know what it is. So, can you take a moment and explain what a postpartum doula is, in either complement or in combination with a birth doula?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people think of the day of birth as being like this most, transformative moment, and it is. But that transformation happens in the fourth trimester too. And so you are, as a woman after having a baby, your hormones are all over the place. Your body has transitioned so much. You now have an entire human dependent on you emotionally, physically. Like it's a huge transition. And so having someone who can walk by you and walk that journey with you, who's not necessarily affected by the lack of sleep or the hormone shifts or the emotional tension, like a spouse might be or a mother might be, but to have someone who's going to be kind of like your built-in best friend for a set amount of time after baby's born. That's what we're there for. A lot of times I'll tell people we're like your maid of honor in postpartum. Like we are there to make sure that everyone's taking care of you, that you're being doted on, that you're being fed, you're getting food, you're getting water, you're getting all the fun things, you're taking naps, you're taking showers. Like we are there to make sure that our moms are human. Like we don't want moms to turn into the mombies, right? We want moms to feel empowered and rested and healed and we want them to enjoy postpartum and not suffer through postpartum. And so kind of providing support to mom to make sure again she's taking care of her personal hygiene. She's showering, she's brushing her teeth. Like she's eating multiple meals a day. She's staying hydrated. She's taking her medications and vitamins and things like that. We're making sure that she's taking naps when she needs to take naps. And if she's feeling overwhelmed, she can pass the baby off to someone that she can trust that's going to allow her to have her space. We're there to help with like all the things with a new baby. How do I swaddle? How do I diaper change? My baby seems gassy. I don't know what to do. Or whatever questions, like my baby's not latching well. Okay, well, let's offer some breastfeeding support. Let's offer some like different positions and different things. And, we're kind of just there as that person when we're sitting in the middle of the night, like, I don't know what to do with this baby right now. Who do I call? You call us. We're the ones that are going to help you. And so it's kind of becoming that village to surround mom, to surround dad, to surround the family, to be that support continuously after baby's born.
Ah, amazing. I've
Hmm.
recently been doing a deep dive into vaginal steaming. And the majority of the research on it, especially the fourth trimester study, was done on recently postpartum mothers. And
Hmm.
vaginal steaming is something that they do in other parts of the world quite regularly for postpartum care. But here it hasn't really been integrated. Is that something that you either have heard of or that you offer in your practice?
I have heard very little about it. Honestly, I have not dived super deep into it, and I'm very curious. Like, I would love to hear more about that, and maybe we can chat because I think that's definitely something that I'm, always open to learning more about.
Yeah, there's a great study put on by the steamy chick Kelly Garza. It's called the fourth trimester steam study, and it's beautiful. And I'm currently testing my postpartum steaming skills on one of my dear friends here who just gave birth a couple of days ago.
Love that.
So we've been experimenting, and it's going great.
That's so cool. I love it.
I love just this idea. Like postpartum is such a fragile time in ways. Like it's a important time, it's a growing time, but to have someone that is going to just come to your house and like take care of you and like take care of these very basic things. Like it's not like, your mother-in-law coming over and judging your parenting and
Yeah. And
you know
honestly, it's just like sitting. Sometimes it's just sitting with our mom, drinking a cup of coffee. Like having someone that you can vent to that's not going to judge you or
mm,
try to fix you or try to give you all of their opinions like a mother-in-law would, but just sitting and being like, listen, I'm an open ear. I can talk if you want me to talk, or I can keep my mouth shut if I need to keep my mouth shut. This is a judgment-free zone, okay? Like just kind of being that person that they can just be 100% authentic and real with. Like that is so important in that immediate postpartum time. So like that emotional support that we bring, it's a whole nother level of support versus just like someone coming by to hold the baby and say hey and then leave.
absolutely. It's not something that you have to prepare for. You don't have to do anything for them. It's like they're there for you.
Yep.
Time when you need it. Even when, the both parents are home, it's like you can use all the support that you have. It takes a village, and we don't really have villages anymore. So
Yep.
we call and support the ways that we can.
Absolutely.
So for someone, let's say that they're not in the triangle in this Raleigh Durham area right now, how would they go about finding either a birth doula or a postpartum doula?
Yeah, so obviously, like jump on Google and look up, doulas in your area. And what I would say if you're doing that is to look at the reviews. I think it's super important to look at the reviews of what people are saying about different people in the community. Another thing that you can do is there's a website called Doula Match. A lot of people will put their profiles on there, and it's an opportunity for you to kind of read about their pricing, a little bit about who they are, what they do, who they work with, where they work, all the things. And it's a really simple resource to use. And then also just like jump on Instagram and search some hashtags, man. Like us doula business owners, we love to use our hashtags. And those are just some options. And ask, like, if you find a page that you like, be like, hey, do you have any resources for this area? Or finding other professionals in the area that, ask your OB, ask your midwife, ask your chiropractor, people like that. A lot of times they'll have referrals for, doula companies or individual doulas that that like they recommend that are quality.
Mhm. Amazing. And for those who are local, how do you recommend that they find support?
Well, you can come over to eastrallydoula.com and reach out to us. But realistically, yeah, very similarly, like talk to your providers. We work with a ton of hospitals, local midwives, the new birth center, all of these things. We have great relationships with so many people in the area. And if we're not the right fit for you, I am not someone who is like, I want everybody. I'm someone that says, I want every mom to feel supported. And so whether it's with us or with another doula, there's gonna be times where I'll do a consult with someone and I'll be like, you know what? I don't think we're gonna be the best fit. I recommend you go to this doula agency or this people, whatever, and I'm gonna refer out. But very similarly, ask questions. Follow on social media. Go to the local moms groups and ask, hey, who's used a doula and who do you recommend?
Mm.
And you're gonna get some good guidance.
Amazing. Who is a good fit for East Raleigh Doula, or who is East Raleigh
Yeah.
Doula a good fit for?
Yeah, so honestly, we are super like open to so many different people. And it's really important for the people who do utilize us to be open to more knowledge. It's very important for our clients to be educated and empowered. One of the things I tell people all the time is we are not your savior. We're not here to save the day. We're not here to save you from a traumatic birth or save you from a bad birth experience. We are here to support you in the decisions that you make for your birth. And so, having someone who is willing to take our classes and to ask the questions and to take ownership of their birth experience, that's like what I guess would be like my dream client, that I would we can support wholeheartedly as they, support themselves. But we work with a lot of first-time moms who are feeling like, I don't know what to do. I don't even know where to start. We also, one of my big passions is working with what we call redemptive births. And so people who maybe had a really bad first birth experience and they don't really know how to navigate the second time around or third time around, we want them to come to us so we can teach them how to do things differently and have what we call that redemptive birth experience.
Oh, so good. And
Yeah.
the resources that you were describing, the classes and like you mentioned like prenatal fitness and prenatal yoga, things like that.
Mhm.
Are those online offerings or do you have an in-person space?
We do have an in-person space. We're located in Wendell, in downtown Wendell. And we do offer classes there pretty much every Saturday during the month. And sometimes we'll add a few more like workshops and things in addition to that. We do have some online options as far as like prenatal fitness. We have personal training that can be done via online, things like that. And we're very flexible in trying to like find resources that work for people. We also launched a referral collective called Flourish Motherhood Collective, which is really kind of expanding that referral network and giving access to not only our clients, but any moms in the area to have access to expert guidance and support by other business professionals that are maternity wellness professionals, essentially. And so that's kind of like a referral bank that we have where they do classes and workshops. It's a Facebook page to kind of just have access to expert guidance without having to go and have appointments at every single place, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's another resource that we offer that seems to be really beneficial for our clients.
Yeah, I love that you're empowering and you're bringing education and tools and skills
Absolutely.
and variation of like it sounds like you're really willing to work with people wherever they're at. It's like if they need online classes, we'll do online classes. If you're here in person, come on in, we'll give you a hug.
Yeah. I feel it's so important to reduce barriers. I
Yes,
think that there's so much info everywhere and that's overwhelming and you
absolutely.
don't know who to trust and you don't know where to get info and it's like I don't know what to do. And so kind of providing a really clear um like access to resources, I think is super important in reducing barriers. That's why like all of our birth packages include our classes. That's like essentially it's free to take our classes when you do birth support with us. You don't have to take them, but they're free because to me, I don't want to create any barriers and limit education for women to feel empowered and confident. It's just too important to me.
Absolutely. What do you think women should know as they are like if someone just found out that they're newly pregnant, it's their first pregnancy, what are some important things that they should know as they're preparing for birth and parenthood?
Yeah, that you don't know enough. Just it's a reality. Listen, I've been doing this for 7 years now, and I have so much. Just you just talked about vaginal steaming, and I'm like, I don't know that much about it, right? There's still so much to learn, and so I think like being open-minded and being willing to learn and being humble enough to learn, I think is so important. And seeking out resources is really important. I think that too many people just say, we'll just go with the flow, we'll see what happens. And I have seen way too much trauma happen and way too many people walking away from birth, again, feeling like it happened to them or it didn't work out the way they expected. And it's because they didn't seek out the resources that were completely available to them. And so I think, taking the steps to find out the resources, to get the support, and to prioritize this season. Like, This isn't something that you're going to get to do all the time. This isn't something that's going to go on for the rest of your life. This is a really short season. Realistically, if you think you're going to have a few kids in a 10-year span, that's it. You're going to have the few kids in a 10-year span. And then after that, you can only look back on that. So take this time to invest in yourself, to take care of yourself, and to make this the best experience possible. I just think that's super important. A lot of people just kind of go with it. And I think that it's too important of a moment in life to just wing it.
Hmm. And educating yourself ahead of time, doing the preparation, like it can make all the difference,
1,000%.
which I love.
Hmm.
I've been very curious recently around prenatal yoga. So I'm a yoga teacher and I manage a studio here in Apex, and we offer prenatal yoga. But what role would you say physically preparing the body, like taking specific classes preparing for birth, plays in the physical preparation for birth?
Absolutely. So much of birth, physically is pre-birth. And so it's basically like you have so many tissues and ligaments and things that are in the way of baby, right? Sometimes people will see like a pelvis and a baby and it just pops through. It is not this big hole that baby just drops through, right? There is so much happening there. And that's why we have back pain and hip pain and knee pain and all the things is because we have tissues, we have ligaments, we have joints, we have all these things that are changing and whatnot throughout the labor process or throughout the pregnancy into the labor process. And so when you're taking care of yourself physically, when you're doing prenatal yoga, when you're taking prenatal fitness classes, when you're doing labor prep and practicing positions and things like that, what you're doing is you're training your body to loosen, to stretch. You're training these tissues. Like if you just imagine if you never work out and then you try to go run a marathon, come on, like your body's not going to love that. But if you are training for a marathon and you're getting your body adjusted to it and you're getting your body used to it, how much easier is it going to be to run the marathon, right? So, same thing with birth. If you just go into birth never prepping physically for that, it's going to be really, really difficult to work through the physical, like, aspect of the labor process and then recovering from the physical aspect of the labor process. And so if you can do things to prepare your body physically ahead of time, it's going to make the actual labor process smoother, more enjoyable, better, and your recovery will be better. So you have to think of it just like you would training for a marathon or training for some big, workout that you're going to do. You don't just jump into it and wing it. You have to prepare, not just mentally, but physically to get the tissues, the ligaments, the body ready for the process.
I love that. And in preparation for birth, postpartum, baby, we talked about like the physical preparation. If someone is wanting to develop a birth plan, when do they start doing that?
From the get-go. I always tell people the earlier the better. I've had people who say, "When should I take your class?" At like, 36 weeks, so it's fresh in my head. I'm like, absolutely not. Take it as soon as possible. Because if you can figure out what you want, the earlier on, the better. Because then you can take that and build upon it and build upon it and build upon it. If this whole time you've been saying, I want an epidural as soon as I get to the hospital. And then at 36 weeks, you take a class and you learn the risks of an epidural. And you're like, ooh, maybe I don't want it until 6 or 7 centimeters. Well, now you only have 2, 3, 4 weeks to prepare for that mentally. But if you decide at 12 weeks, okay, I still want an epidural, but I'm going to want to wait until this point in labor, what can I do up until that point? What are the things I can do? Oh, let me Google that. Let me take another class. Let me learn these things. And you give yourself way more opportunity to prepare mentally and physically for the intention you have for your birth. And so I always say the earlier you can think through what you want, the better, so that you can do everything you possibly can to prepare for that. Same thing. If you wanted to run a marathon, it's a lot better to say I'm going to run a marathon in 6 months than I'm going to run a marathon in 6 days.
Yeah.
Right? So same thing, the longer out you plan for it, the more preparation time you're going to have a better experience in it.
And how do you prepare people for the unpredictability of birth when things aren't going according to your birth plan?
Yeah, so I always talk about when it comes to making a birth plan is not a checklist. A birth plan is not a plan. A birth plan is a communication tool. And so what is happening in a birth process is not this checklist of this, I'm going to have an unmedicated physiological birth. Mm-mm. We can't control outcomes. We can only control the process and making the decisions to get to the outcome, right? But the outcome isn't up to us, and it's not up to the mom, it's not up to the provider. Honestly, it's up to the baby. And
Yeah.
so kind of releasing that pressure of the outcome and saying, when you make a birth plan, what we're saying here is this is how we communicate to our support team. Let's say, again, epidural is the big one. I'm using that as an example because it's the most common one. But if someone says they don't want an epidural, I'm not going to put on the birth plan, no epidural. I'm going to say, do not ask or offer. So that way I know as the doula, the OB knows, the nurses know, we're not going to come in here and offer this to her. But if at any point she comes in and says, I want an epidural, give me an epidural, we might say, hey, you had expressed you didn't want this. Are you sure this is what you want? And she says, yes. Okay, let's do it. We're going to do this. But I know my role, according to that birth plan, is I'm not going to project that onto her. I'm not going to offer something she's told me she doesn't want to offer. And so I think shifting the mindset of what a birth plan actually is, being a communication tool, relieves some of that pressure, realizing that at any point in the process, if mom wants to change her mind about anything, she can because it's her birth. And then again, removing that pressure of the outcome to say it's not our choice, it's not our decision to create an outcome, it's our decision to make choices along the way that will lead to some outcome. And if we decide to, get an elective induction at 39 weeks, awesome. Here's the risks of that, the benefits of that, things like that. It's your decision. You understand that this would lead to this, this, and this, or it may lead to this, this, and this. When they know their options and they know the risks, benefits, and alternatives to all those options, it makes them still have an empowered birth regardless of the outcome.
Mhm. And you are someone who is very empowered and educated and experienced in this field. I'm curious, why did you create East Raleigh Doula instead of just working on your own?
Yeah. So essentially, it started with so my doula and I were each other's backup. So I did start on my own. I was doing my own thing, and my friend was doing her own thing. And then 2020 hit, COVID hit, and we had a lot of just difficulty with being in the hospital, or if we were, around someone who was exposed, we wouldn't want to expose new moms. And so it was very much just like high conflict time of like, how do we support our clients well? We noticed we kept having to call each other into births. And so I would go to her client's birth. I had never met them. I never had a relationship with them. And I'd walk in at this super vulnerable moment and I'm just another stranger. And we realized this isn't working. Like if we have to call each other in, it's not working. And so at the end of 2020, after this year of things not working well because of how we had to do backup systems, we were like, let's just combine our schedules, meet people together, and then we can be each other's backup, but we at least know the clients. And so it kind of just launched with the two of us wanting to be each other's backups, but not wanting to be strangers to our clients. And then after a year of doing that, we didn't really have the intention of it getting much bigger. But we kept getting so many requests for people that we were like, well, maybe we can just add on like one or two doulas and just to be backups or things like that. And it was kind of just a happenstance where we would add a couple doulas and then we kept getting more clients. And so we would add a couple more doulas and we'd get more clients. And then now here we are 4 years later, and there's 19 people on our team and we're serving over 100 moms a year. And it kind of just happened. It wasn't really the intention at first, but over these last 4 years of transitioning to this agency model, I have learned to be so passionate about developing and equipping doulas. So, in as much as I love doing that for moms and families, I also love doing it for doulas, like to be a doula for doulas, essentially, where I am uplifting and supporting and encouraging. And so, like, my doulas leave a birth that maybe something didn't go so great and they're really discouraged. They know they can call me at 3 in the morning on their way home and say, oh my gosh, this happened. I need to talk to you about it. Or, they had a really positive birth and they can't wait to tell someone. And they know I'm going to text Emily right now and I'm going to tell her how amazing this went. And so being able to be that support system for my doulas has been a passion that kind of developed by happenstance over the last couple years.
The doula for doulas.
The doula for doulas, that's me.
And so, through your own experience, meeting with people, doing consultations, doulaing, and now overseeing and doulaing other doulas, what are some misconceptions about doulas?
Oh gosh. One of them for sure is that we only do home births, that
Uh-huh.
we only do unmedicated birth, and that like we're these super crunchy hippies, and that's all we do. And I always tell people like, no, like I might be that way personally. That's fine. And so many people are like their own perspectives and things. It doesn't matter. Like we're not here to project anything. We are here to support. And so we have moms that hire us that are like, I do want epidural from the get-go. And so we're like, cool, let's talk about how to optimize that. We have some that are like, I do want home birth and, want as minimal intervention as possible. And we're like, awesome, let's talk about that. And so we're here to support all types of births. We have C-section mamas who we walk through the C-section process with and provide support for. Like we will do so many different types of births and not just like unmedicated births or home births. I think another misconception is that we are midwives, that doulas and midwives are the same. We already addressed that a little bit, but we're not the same. We are in addition to, and we are providing different services. Trying to think some of the other misconceptions that we are like super against medicine. I
Mhm.
think that there's a misconception that we think medicine is like awful, but there's a time and place for everything. And what we always talk about is it's a tool. If we're utilizing it as a tool, then it's beneficial. If we're utilizing it for control, then it's not. And so teaching people the difference between utilizing medicine as a control factor versus as a tool in your tool belt. And so I think that I've seen epidurals be the best thing possible for a mom because she was super tense and she was super overwhelmed and stressed and it was putting pressure on the baby and it wasn't healthy. And so then she got an epidural and she relaxed and that baby came smoothly and beautifully. And then I've seen where, people get an epidural because they're scared and they're fearful and they're not making an educated and informed decision, but they're being coerced to do something that they didn't really want to do. And then it ends up being super traumatic. And so, yeah, we're not here to tell you not to use medicine or things like that. We're here to help you understand when to utilize things based on your own birth goals and birth decisions.
Those are important misconceptions to clear up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, most people don't know what a doula is. And then
Mm-hmm.
they get, yeah, lumped into this like crunchy hippie. And I mean, it just so happens that a lot of the people who become doulas do have a holistic background.
Yeah.
But I love this openness and really just someone to help you navigate whatever your birth experience is going to be and whatever you want it.
Yeah.
It's very empowering and open-minded. And one thing that you've repeated throughout this conversation is just that you're not there to like project your own agenda. You are amplifying you. I love that phrase. You are the microphone for the
Yeah.
mother.
Mm-hmm.
So potent and powerful. If there's anyone who's listening who wants to become a doula, how would you recommend them starting that process?
Yeah, so I actually, listen, I am ADHD to the core, and I have like 100 businesses.
Uh,
So I have a doula training company that I launched called Your Doula Coach. We do birth doula training and certification, as well as mentorship and coaching to kind of help launch doula businesses. So if you wanted to work with me, I'd love for you to yourdoulacoach.com, and we can kind of talk through that process. That's going to be more local at this point. But if you're not local or if that's not what the route you want to go, there are so many different options out there for doula companies. I definitely recommend getting trained and certified. I think that there is another level of education that is important to making sure that we are really giving quality care to our clients. And there's a big difference from my first 2 years when I did it without training versus what I do now with training. I don't think it's the end all be all, but I do think it can be really important. But yeah, I would definitely say look into a doula certification process, and then start making connections. Word of mouth is the best way to have a business. And so having conversations, start connecting with other professionals, start kind of dabbling in the birth world and soak up as much as you can when it comes to learning. Do the research, read the books, do the classes, do everything you can to be as educated as possible. And yeah, that's what I'd recommend.
Amazing. How long does your training normally take?
Yeah, so a lot of people think doula certification is like this huge process. It's really not. It's pretty simple to become a doula. So my training, along with many other doula company trainings, are usually it's like a 2-day process. So
Oh,
for mine, for example, it's a 2-day process. It's a 2-day training, and then there's a exam and there's a like follow up for attending your first birth with like documentation. And so once you do all that, that's how you can get certified as a doula through your doula coach. A lot of companies sometimes, like Dona, for example, same thing. It's like a weekend intensive training, and then you have to go through and fill out an application. Usually write a couple essays. I think you have to do 3 births with them with documentation. Pro Doula is another company. Theirs is just like a training and an exam. So again, research and figure out what company is going to be the best fit for you. But yeah, so your doula coach, it's right here in Wendell. We do it every quarter. We do a training and it's followed by a 3-month mentorship. Again, where I'm kind of walking through that initial business launch of setting up a website, getting your social media started, getting the templates and the documents and the contracts and the client management systems and invoicing and kind of talking and teaching through all of that. So that's how it would work for us. Is it's 2-day training, certification, and then a 3-month coaching process.
that's phenomenal. It is definitely on my list of dreams and goals to become a doula. I don't know if I have the space for it right now, but it's
Yeah,
good to know that you're right here and that
right
I
here.
spoke of the starting in just 2 days, but that follow up, that like 3 months of like the business coaching, the support, like that is so important. Because yeah, anyone can be like, here's some information, bye. But I love that you're offering that like hands-on follow-up, like you're
Mhm.
doing the doula, you're doing the postpartum doula right there. Like,
Yeah. And that's the thing is a lot of people take this training and they're like, I don't know what the heck to do from here. Like, how do I actually get my first client? How do I actually market myself? How do I actually communicate? How do I do a consult? Like, I don't know how to do these things. And so that's where I'm like, I don't want people just to have a doula badge. I want people to be good doulas. And so that's kind of where that mentorship comes in of like, I'm going to help you be a good doula and not just do a job. I'm going to help you do it really well.
oh, spectacular. So we sprinkled throughout the conversation the things that you offer, but can you just do a little summary, a little wrap up of the things that you are currently offering?
Yeah. So at East Raleigh Doula Company, we are offering birth doula support for women all over the triangle, north, south, east, west, central, all over. So we offer birth doula support, postpartum doula support. We offer lots of education. So we have childbirth education class. We have it's called our Settling In with Baby class, and that's a newborn, postpartum, and breastfeeding class. We have a mindful movement class, which is kind of like labor prep and prenatal fitness. So all 3 of those classes we offer monthly. We also have a childbirth education class that is dedicated to home birth and birth center births. We do that at the Haven Birth Center in Cary once a month. And so we have every Saturday of the month, we have a class happening. We offer placenta encapsulation. We offer virtual prenatal fitness training. Um, yeah. And then of course we offer like community. So we have a Facebook group for our families, East Raleigh Doula families. And then we also have our Flourish Motherhood Collective group that anybody can be a part of. So those are other resources that you get by being a part of our community.
Amazing. And where can people find you, learn more about you, keep up with what you're offering?
Yeah, so check out our website, eastraleighdula.com, or you can follow us on Instagram at East Raleigh Doula Co. And we like to share fun posts and, we have lots of funny videos and stuff on there. But those are going to be kind of like the main places that you can find out what we're doing, when we're doing it, where we're doing it.
Amazing. I'll have all that information in the show notes. Emily, this has been so lovely. I'm so grateful for your time and your expertise and the service that you are providing for the community. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Mystic Feminine Fertility Podcast. And if you want to learn more about cycle tracking, divine feminine energy, and connecting to the goddess within, you're very welcome to visit mysticfemininefertility.com or check me out on Instagram or TikTok. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Thank you so much for spending time with me.